6 months had passed since the destruction of the hegemony fleet. The galaxy was a very different place now. On Earth, President Susan Taylor stood in the Oval Office of the White House, looking out at the night sky. The stars no longer seemed distant and cold. They were neighbors now, some friendly, some afraid, but all aware that humanity was watching. President Taylor was a tall woman with short blonde hair and green eyes that had seen too much in recent months. She had been a senator when the aliens first made contact 50 years ago. Now she led humanity into a new age among the stars. "Madam President," said her aide, a young man named Peter Kane, "the Galactic Council has sent another message." Susan turned from the window. "What do they want this time?" "They are asking for a formal meeting. They want to discuss the new borders you announced last month." Susan smiled. The new borders. Humanity had claimed a sphere of space 100 light years around Earth. Not because they wanted to conquer anything, but because they wanted a safe zone where no alien military ships could enter without permission. "Tell them I will consider it," Susan said. "But first I want to know how our exploration fleets are doing." Captain Bill Turner stood on the bridge of the UES Explorer, watching a beautiful blue planet grow larger on his main screen. This was his 15th new world in 6 months, and each one had been a surprise. His job was not to conquer these planets, but to find ones that needed help. Bill was a quiet man with brown hair and kind eyes. He had volunteered for exploration duty because he wanted to see what was really happening in the galaxy beyond the Council's propaganda. "Captain," called his science officer, a young woman named Lisa Grant, "I am reading life signs on the planet's surface. The energy signatures suggest a pre-industrial civilization." "Any signs of Council interference?" Bill asked. Lisa checked her instruments again. "Negative, sir. But I am detecting some kind of orbital platform. It looks abandoned." Bill studied the readings on his screen. The platform was definitely Council technology, but it had been shut down for months. "Take us closer. I want to see what the Council was doing here." As the explorer moved toward the planet, they found the remains of a mining operation. The Council had been strip mining the planet's largest continent, taking all the valuable metals and leaving behind poisoned earth and dead rivers. "Sir," Lisa said quietly, "the aliens down there are dying. The mining operation contaminated their water supply." Bill closed his eyes for a moment. This was the third world they had found like this in 2 weeks. The Council had a habit of taking what they wanted and leaving destruction behind. "Deploy the medical teams," he ordered, "and get Dr. Martinez up here." Dr. Elena Martinez was the ship's biologist and medical expert. She was a small woman with dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. When she arrived on the bridge, she immediately began studying the scan results. "Can we help them?" Bill asked. Elena nodded slowly. "Yes, but it will take time. We need to clean the water and repair the damage to their ecosystem, maybe 6 months of work." "Do it," Bill said, "and send a message to Earth. Tell them we found another one." President Taylor received Bill's message while she was meeting with her military advisors. General Chris Bell sat across from her at a large table covered with star charts and intelligence reports. "How many does that make?" Susan asked. 43 worlds, Bell replied. "All of them damaged by Council mining, logging, or other resource extraction. Most of the local populations are barely surviving." Susan looked at the reports scattered across the table. Each one told the same story. The Council species would find a world with primitive aliens, take everything valuable, and leave the locals to die slowly. "What about the ones that fought back?" she asked. Bell's face grew dark. 17 species completely wiped out, not conquered, exterminated. The Council called it pest control. Susan felt anger building in her chest. She had known the Council was cruel, but she had not realized how cruel until they started exploring beyond human space. "Any word from the Kalari Empire?" she asked. They want to meet, Bell said. Their ambassador is requesting formal alliance talks. The Kalari were different from the other council species. They were warriors, but they had a code of honor. When they conquered a world, they at least let the locals live as citizens of their empire. Set up the meeting, Susan said, but make it clear that any alliance depends on them helping us protect the smaller species. Ambassador Tony Clark sat in a conference room on the space station Unity, orbiting the neutral world of Haven. Across from him sat Ambassador Zalketh of the Kalari Empire. The Kalari looked like giant cats with silver fur and intelligent yellow eyes. Your people fight well, Zalketh said in his deep, rumbling voice. The hegemony thought they were the strongest warriors in the galaxy. You proved them wrong in minutes. Tony smiled. We do not like fighting, but we are good at it when we have to be. That is why we want to ally with you, Zalketh said. The council is falling apart. Half the member species are leaving. They are afraid you will attack them next. Will you help us protect the smaller species? Tony asked. Zalketh's ears twitched, which was how Kalari showed surprise. You want us to protect others? Not conquer them? The galaxy has had enough conquering, Tony said. It is time to try something different. Meanwhile, in space near the former hegemony capital, Admiral Kate Rodriguez commanded a fleet of human ships patrolling the trade routes. The hegemony had collapsed completely after losing their invasion fleet. Now dozens of their former colony, worlds were declaring independence. Kate stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, reading reports from across the galaxy. Most of the news was good. Worlds that had been enslaved for centuries were now free. Trade routes that had been controlled by council monopolies were now open to everyone. Admiral, her communications officer called out, we are receiving a distress call from the Zentari system. They say they are under attack by raiders. Kate looked at her tactical display. The Zentari were a peaceful species of plant-like aliens who had never hurt anyone. They grew food that fed half the local sector. How many ships are attacking them? Kate asked. 20, ma'am. Former hegemony vessels that turned pirate after the collapse. Kate smiled. Signal the fleet. We are going to teach some pirates why. You do not attack innocent people. The human ships moved toward the Zentari system at maximum speed. When they arrived, they found the raiders bombarding the planet's surface, demanding that the Zentari surrender their food supplies. The pirates never had a chance. Human ships appeared around them like ghosts, and the battle was over in minutes. The surviving raiders were captured and their ships destroyed. Back on Earth, President Taylor met with the leaders of the Terran Federation in the Great Assembly Hall in Geneva. Representatives from every continent sat in the circular chamber, discussing humanity's role in the galaxy. The question before us is simple, Susan said to the assembled delegates. Do we become the new rulers of the galaxy? Or do we become its protectors? An elderly man from Africa raised his hand. What is the difference? Rulers take, Susan replied. Protectors give. A woman from Asia stood up. The aliens will never accept us as protectors. They fear us too much. Then we will have to prove that their fear is misplaced, Susan said. We will show them that humans can be trusted with power. That night, Susan stood again at her office window, looking up at the stars. Admiral Morrison's voice came through, her communication device from wherever he was in the galaxy. The council has officially dissolved, he reported. The remaining species are forming smaller alliances based on region and common interests. Any threats to human space? Susan asked. None. Most species are too busy rebuilding to think about fighting. The ones that are not rebuilding are asking for our help. Susan nodded. It was what she had hoped for. And our exploration fleets? Still finding new species that need assistance. Bill Turner's team just discovered a civilization that has been fighting a plague for 50 years. We are sending medical supplies. Susan smiled. This was the galaxy she wanted to create. Not one ruled by fear and conquest, but one where the Strong protected the weak and knowledge was shared freely. Sir, came another voice through the communication device. It was Captain Nina Walsh, reporting from somewhere in deep space. We have made contact with a species called the Ethereals. They say they have been watching the galaxy for 1,000 years, waiting for someone worthy to make contact with. What do they want? Susan asked. To meet the humans who ended the Age of Conquest? Nina replied. They want to teach us about the older civilizations that came before the Council. Susan looked up at the stars with wonder. The galaxy was full of mysteries, and humanity was just beginning to explore them. Tell them we would be honored to meet them, she said, but make it clear that we come as friends, not conquerors. As she spoke those words, Susan realized that humanity had found its true destiny among the stars. Not as rulers or destroyers, but as guardians of peace in a galaxy that had forgotten what peace could look like. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of humanity had begun. The crystal chamber of the Galactic Council was in chaos. News of the hegemony fleet's destruction had spread across the galaxy in just 3 days. Alien delegates shouted at each other in dozens of different languages. Some pounded their tentacles on their desks. Others clicked their claws in anger. A few simply sat in stunned silence. Chairman Vordash stood at the center of the chamber, his massive form towering over the other delegates. His skin was dark purple, and 3 red eyes glowed on his face. He had ruled the Galactic Council for 200 years, and he had never seen the delegates this frightened. "Order!" Vordash shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We will have order." The noise slowly died down as the delegates took their seats, but the fear remained. Everyone could feel it in the air like a bad smell. "We have received confirmation," Vordash announced. "The hegemony invasion fleet has been completely destroyed. 70,000 ships. Gone." A spider-like delegate from the Arachnid Collective raised one of her 8 legs. "How is this possible? The humans had only a few hundred primitive vessels." "Apparently, our intelligence was wrong," Vordash replied. "Very wrong." A new voice spoke from the entrance to the chamber. "Your intelligence was exactly what we wanted it to be." Every head in the chamber turned to look at the human walking down the center aisle. He was a tall man with black hair and blue eyes, wearing a simple gray suit. 6 human guards followed behind him, but they looked relaxed, almost casual. "I am Ambassador Tony Clark," the man said as he reached the center of the chamber. "I represent the United Earth government." Vordash stared down at the human. "You were not invited to this session." Tony smiled. "I do not need an invitation to attend my own trial." "Your trial?" asked a delegate that looked like a walking tree. "What trial?" "The trial where you decide whether to declare war on humanity," Tony said. "I thought I should be here to answer your questions." The chamber erupted in angry voices again. Several delegates stood up and pointed at Tony with claws, tentacles, and appendages that had no names. "You destroyed our fleet!" shouted the spider. Delegate: "That was an act of war." "No," Tony said calmly. "That was self-defense. You sent 70,000 ships to invade our home. We defended ourselves." A new delegate spoke up. This one was tall and thin, with silver skin that gleamed like metal. "Our intelligence reports show that you have been hiding your true military strength for decades. You have been lying to the Council." "Have we?" Tony asked. "When did we ever claim to be weak? When did we ever ask you to underestimate us?" The metallic delegate looked confused. "But your technology, your ships, your weapons, our spies reported that you were primitives." Tony reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. It looked like a simple tablet, but when he touched the screen, a hologram appeared above his head. The hologram showed the solar system around Earth, but now it was filled with human ships and space stations. "Your spies saw exactly what we showed." "Them," Tony said. A few orbital platforms, some mining ships, a handful of patrol vessels. They never thought to look deeper. "Where were you hiding the rest?" demanded another delegate, this one with blue skin and 4 arms. "We were not hiding them," Tony said. "We were building them." Dr. Helen Price walked down the aisle to join Tony at the center of the chamber. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew secrets that could shake the galaxy. "I am Dr. Price," she said to the assembled delegates. "I study alien biology and technology." "What does that have to do with your hidden fleet?" asked the tree-like delegate. Dr. Price smiled. "Everything." She held up her hand, and suddenly a small star appeared floating above her palm. The light from it lit up the entire chamber, and the heat could be felt by every delegate. The aliens gasped and drew back in their seats. Several started to stand, but the star vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "How did you do that?" whispered the spider delegate. "We learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level," Dr. Price said. "While you were building bigger ships and stronger weapons, we were learning to control the basic forces of the universe." Tony nodded to one of his guards, a tall man with brown hair named Captain Bill Turner. Turner pulled out his own device and touched a button. Suddenly, the air in the chamber shimmered, and a human warship appeared floating above the delegates' heads. The ship was not large by galactic standards, maybe 200 feet long, but it radiated power like a star. The aliens could feel the energy coming from it, pressing down on them like a heavy weight. "This is the UES Guardian," Tony said, "a standard patrol ship from our home fleet. It carries the destructive power of a dozen hegemony battleships, but it is small enough to land on a city street." Chairman Vordash looked up at the ship floating above his head. "Impossible. No ship that small could generate that much power." "Size does not matter when you understand how energy really works," Dr. Price said. She gestured, and the ship disappeared. "We compress the power of stars into spaces the size of your fist." A new delegate stood up in the crowd. This one looked like a giant slug with purple slime covering its body. "If you have such power, why did you not conquer the galaxy long ago?" Tony looked around the chamber at all the frightened alien faces. "Because we do not want to conquer anyone. We want to be left alone." "But you could destroy us all," said the metallic delegate. "With power like that, you could rule the entire galaxy." "Yes," Tony said simply. "We could." The chamber became very quiet. The only sound was the humming of the crystal walls and the breathing of 100 different alien species. "Then why do you not do it?" asked Chairman Vordash. General Chris Bell stepped forward from among Tony's guards. He was an older man with silver hair and scars on his face from old battles. "Because ruling the galaxy would be a waste of time." "A waste of time?" asked the spider delegate. "Think about it," Bell said. "Why would we want to spend our lives managing hundreds of worlds full of aliens who hate us? Why would we want to fight rebellions and deal with political problems across 1,000 star systems?" Tony nodded. "We have better things to do with our time. We have science to pursue, art to create, worlds to explore. Ruling others is a job for those who cannot think of anything better to do." A small alien with green fur and large eyes raised a tiny hand. "But if you do not want to conquer us, what do you want?" "We want you to leave us alone," Tony said. "We want to live in peace on our worlds and explore the parts of the galaxy that interest us. We do not want to fight wars or make enemies." "And if we refuse?" asked Vordash. Tony looked up at the massive alien leader. "Then you will join the hegemony fleet." Dr. Price stepped forward again. "But we would prefer not to do that. Destroying life is wasteful. We would rather create it." She held up her hand again, and this time flowers began to grow from her palm. Real flowers, with petals of every color imaginable. The scent filled the chamber with sweetness. "We can create life as easily as we can destroy it," she said. We can make dead worlds bloom or turn living planets into dust. The choice is yours." The delegates stared at the flowers in wonder and fear. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time, a reminder of humanity's power to create and destroy. Tony looked around the chamber one more time. "The hegemony thought we were weak because we did not act like conquerors. They learned too late that the quiet ones are often the most dangerous." He turned and began walking toward the exit, his guards following behind him. "We will give you time to think about what you have learned today," he called over his shoulder. "But do not take too long. Our patience is not unlimited." The humans left the chamber, leaving behind a room full of aliens who finally understood that the galaxy had changed forever. Admiral Vexthul stared at the empty space on his screen where Admiral Rodriguez had been. His four hands gripped the arms of his command chair so tightly that the metal began to bend. Around him, his bridge crew waited in silence. No one spoke, no one moved. They all knew they were trapped. "Options," Vexthul said finally. His voice was barely a whisper. His tactical officer, a reptilian alien with yellow scales, looked up from his console. "Sir, we could try to break through their lines. If we concentrate all our firepower on one section of their fleet, we might punch a hole and escape." "How many ships would we lose?" Vexthul asked. The tactical officer ran the numbers on his computer. His face went pale. "All of them, sir. Their weapons are too powerful. We would not even scratch their defenses." Vexthul closed his eyes. In 300 years of military service, he had never faced a situation like this. The hegemony fleet was supposed to be unstoppable. They had conquered 100 worlds. They had destroyed entire civilizations. Now, they were about to be wiped out by a species they had thought was primitive. "Admiral," called his communications officer, "the human fleet is moving." Vexthul opened his eyes and looked at the tactical display. The human ships were indeed moving, but not toward the hegemony fleet. They were moving away, creating a clear path through their formation. "They are opening a corridor for us to retreat," the tactical officer said with surprise. Before Vexthul could respond, another alarm started blaring. This one was different from the weapons alarms. This was the hyperspace detection system. "Sir," shouted the sensor officer, "I am reading massive hyperspace signatures behind us. Something big is coming." Vexthul spun his chair around to face the rear display. Space began to ripple and tear as dozens of new ships dropped out of hyperspace. But these were not human ships. These were hegemony vessels, painted in the blue and silver colors of the Third Fleet. Admiral Steve Morgan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Retribution. The ship had been hiding in the upper atmosphere of Jupiter for 6 months, using the gas giant storms to mask its energy signature. Now, with 40,000 human ships behind him, he had emerged to spring the trap. Morgan was a tall man with broad shoulders and gray hair cut in military style. His dark eyes studied the tactical display with satisfaction. The plan was working perfectly. "Communications. Open a channel to the hegemony Third Fleet," he ordered. "Channel open, sir," replied his communications officer, a young woman with blonde hair. "Hegemony vessels, this is Admiral Morgan of the United Earth Defense Force. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately." On the lead hegemony ship, Admiral Kolmar stared at his screens in confusion. He had brought the Third Fleet to support Vexthul's invasion, but now he found himself trapped between two human forces. His fleet of 20,000 ships seemed small compared to the human armada that surrounded them. "Where did they come from?" Kolmar asked his science officer. "Unknown, sir. Our sensors show they were hiding in the electromagnetic storms around the gas giant. We had no idea they were there." Kolmar was younger than Vexthul, with green skin and 6 arms that moved constantly when he was nervous. He had earned his position through politics rather than military skill, and now he was facing the greatest military disaster in hegemony history. "Sir," his weapons officer called out, "the humans are powering up their weapons." Before Kolmar could respond, space around his fleet began to change. The stars seemed to bend and twist as human ships appeared from nowhere. These ships looked different from the others. They were darker, with hulls that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. Captain Nina Walsh commanded the Dimensional Warfare Division from her ship, the UES Phase Walker. Her vessels had been hiding in pocket dimensions, waiting for this moment. Nina was a small woman with short brown hair and intense blue eyes. She had spent 10 years perfecting the technology that allowed her ships to step outside normal space. "All ships, begin phase insertion," Nina ordered. Her 40 ships began to flicker in and out of reality, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Each time they appeared, they fired their weapons at the hegemony vessels, then vanished before return. Fire could reach them. The hegemony fleet found themselves fighting an enemy they could not see or target. Their own weapons passed harmlessly through empty space, while human weapons struck their ships from impossible angles. "This is a nightmare," Kolmar whispered as another of his battleships exploded. On the other side of the battlefield, Vex Thul watched the destruction of the Third Fleet with growing horror. His own ships were still surrounded by Admiral Rodriguez's forces, but they had not fired a shot. They were just watching the slaughter. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "I am receiving a transmission from the human fleet. It is Admiral Rodriguez again." "Put her on screen," Vex Thul ordered. Rodriguez appeared on the display, still calm and composed. Behind her, Vex Thul could see other humans working at control stations. "Admiral Vex Thul," she said, "I am offering you one last chance. Order your remaining ships to stand down and surrender. Your crews will be treated according to the rules of war." "And if I refuse?" Vex Thul asked. Rodriguez glanced at something off-screen. "Then you will share the fate of the Third Fleet." Vex Thul looked at his tactical display. The Third Fleet was almost completely destroyed. Kolmar's flagship was surrounded by wreckage and bodies floating in space. Only a few hundred of his 20,000 ships were still fighting, and they would not last much longer. "You said you would let us retreat," Vex Thul said. "That offer expired when your reinforcements arrived," Rodriguez replied. "We cannot allow word of this battle to reach the Hegemony Council. Not yet." On his bridge, Colonel Dan Hayes watched the battle through his tactical display. Hayes was a short, muscular man with a scarred face and cold gray eyes. He commanded the human boarding forces, soldiers trained for close combat in the vacuum of space. "Sir," his aide said, "Admiral Rodriguez is requesting that we prepare for boarding operations." Hayes smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Tell the Admiral we are ready. Deploy all teams." Hundreds of small human craft launched from the larger ships. They moved like silver darts through space, too fast and too small for the hegemony weapons to target effectively. Each craft carried 20 soldiers in powered armor. The boarding craft attached themselves to hegemony ships like parasites. Cutting beams sliced through alien hull metal as if it were paper. Within minutes, human soldiers were fighting there, way through the corridors of enemy vessels. The hegemony crews had never faced human soldiers in close combat. They quickly learned why humans were feared throughout the galaxy as warriors. The humans moved faster, fought harder, and showed no mercy to those who had come to destroy their world. Ship after ship fell to the boarding parties. Some hegemony crews surrendered immediately when they saw the humans coming. Others fought to the end and were destroyed. Commander Rachel Liu sat in the Cyber Warfare Center of the UES Defiance. She was a quiet woman with long black hair and glasses, but her fingers moved across her keyboard like lightning. Around her, dozens of other technicians worked to break into hegemony computer systems. "I am inside their command network," Liu announced, "taking control of their navigation systems now." On screens around the Cyber Warfare Center, hegemony ships began to turn their weapons on each other. Their own computers, now controlled by human hackers, made them attack their allies. The battle that had begun with 50,000 hegemony ships attacking Earth was now almost over. Most of the alien vessels were destroyed or captured. The few that remained were running for their lives, but even they would not escape. Admiral Rodriguez looked at her tactical display with satisfaction. The trap had worked perfectly. The Galaxy would soon learn that attacking Earth was the biggest mistake any species could make. "Send a message to Admiral Morrison at Galactic Council," she ordered. "Tell him the home fleet sends its regards." The space around Neptune was cold and empty. At least, that was what the sensors on the hegemony ships showed. Admiral Vex Thol stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds. The massive ship was 10 miles long and carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Behind him, 50,000 more ships stretched out across space like a deadly cloud. Vex Thol was proud of his fleet. Every ship was painted in the red and black colors of the hegemony. Some looked like giant spears with weapons along their sides. Others resembled floating cities with thick armor and massive guns. The smallest ships were still larger than anything the humans were supposed to have. "Status report," Vex Thol ordered. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "All ships are in position, Admiral," replied his second-in-command, a thin alien with blue skin and 6 arms. "We are 30 minutes from Earth's orbit. Our scouts report no human ships in the area." Vex Thol smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Of course not. They are probably hiding behind their little moon, hoping we will not see them." The bridge crew laughed. They had all heard stories about human cowardice, how they ran from fights and hid when stronger enemies appeared. "This would be an easy victory, sir," called out another officer from across the bridge. "We are receiving a transmission from Earth." "Put it on the main screen," Vex Thol ordered. The large screen at the front of the bridge flickered to life. A human woman appeared, wearing a blue uniform with gold markings on the shoulders. She had short red hair and green eyes that looked very calm for someone about to die. "I am Admiral Kate Rodriguez of the United Earth Defense Force," she said. "You are entering human space without permission. Turn around and leave immediately." Vex Thol laughed so hard that he had to hold onto his chair. His crew joined in, filling the bridge with the sound of alien laughter. "Little human," Vex Thol said when he could speak again. "Look at your screens. Do you see my fleet? 50,000 ships, each one more powerful than anything your people have ever built. And you tell me to leave?" Rodriguez did not look afraid. She did not even look worried. "I see your ships, Admiral Vex Thol. I also see that you have made a very big mistake." "What mistake?" Vex Thol asked, still smiling. "You assumed we would be easy to defeat." Rodriguez reached for something off-screen. Suddenly, every alarm on the hegemony flagship began to scream at once. The bridge crew ran to their stations, looking at their instruments with confusion and fear. "Admiral," shouted the officer at the sensor station, "I am reading massive energy signatures all around us." "What kind of energy signatures?" Vex Thol demanded. Before the officer could answer, space itself seemed to come alive. What had looked like empty darkness a moment before was suddenly filled with ships, human ships. Thousands of them appeared from nowhere surrounding the hegemony fleet, like a trap closing shut. But these were not the primitive vessels that hegemony intelligence had reported. These ships were sleek and silver, with smooth hulls that seemed to bend light around them. They were smaller than the hegemony ships, but something about them felt dangerous. Very dangerous. "How many ships?" Vex Thol asked, his voice much quieter. "Now." The sensor officer looked at his screen, then looked again. His hands were shaking. 200,000, sir. Maybe more. They keep appearing." Vex Thol stared at the main screen. The human admiral was still there, still calm, still not afraid. "Impossible," he whispered. "Our intelligence said you had only a few hundred ships. Where did these come from?" Rodriguez smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "We built them while you were not looking." But our spies have been watching your world for decades. We know about every shipyard, every factory. You know about the ones we let you see, Rodriguez said. Did you really think we would show you everything? Another officer on the Hegemony bridge spoke up, his voice full of panic. Admiral, their ships are moving into attack formation. And sir, the energy readings from their weapons are off the scale. Vexthul looked at his own weapons officer. Can we fight them? The weapons officer was a large alien with gray skin and red eyes. He had fought in 100 battles and never shown fear. Now his hands trembled as he read his instruments. Sir, I have never seen energy signatures like these. Each of their ships is putting out as much power as one of our battleships. That is impossible. Look at them. They are tiny compared to our ships. Size does not matter when you know how to use what you have, Rodriguez said from the screen. She had heard every word they said. Would you like a demonstration? She nodded to someone off-screen. Suddenly, one of the human ships fired a single shot. The beam of energy was so bright it lit up the entire area of space around them. It struck one of the Hegemony's largest battleships, a vessel that carried 20,000 soldiers, and enough weapons to destroy a city. The battleship simply disappeared. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. Not destroyed, not broken into pieces. Gone. The bridge of the destroyer of worlds became very quiet. Every alien stared at the empty space where their battleship had been. What kind of weapon was that? Vexthul asked. We call it a matter disruptor, Rodriguez said. It breaks the bonds between atoms. Very clean, very effective. Another human ship fired, and another Hegemony vessel vanished. Then another. The human ships were not even trying hard. They fired one shot each, and each shot made a Hegemony ship cease to exist. Stop, Vexthul said. Please stop. The human ships stopped firing. Rodriguez looked at him from the screen with those calm green eyes. Are you ready to listen now? She asked. Vexthul looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at him, waiting for orders. Outside, 50,000 Hegemony ships were surrounded by 200,000 human vessels that could destroy them without effort. How is this possible? He asked. Our technology is thousands of years more advanced than yours. Your technology is old, Rodriguez said. You learned to build big ships and powerful guns, and then you stopped learning. We never stopped learning. A new voice spoke from behind Rodriguez. A man moved into view on the screen. He was older, with gray hair and kind eyes behind glasses. He wore a white coat instead of a uniform. I am Dr. Alex Carter, he said. While your people spent centuries conquering planets, we spent them understanding how the universe really works. That is impossible, said the Hegemony science officer. We have studied physics for 10,000 years. Dr. Carter smiled. You studied the physics you could see. We learned to look deeper, much deeper. He held up a small device, no bigger than his hand. This contains more knowledge about quantum mechanics than all of your universities combined. We did not just learn to travel faster than light. We learned to hide in the spaces between dimensions. We learned to compress matter so tightly that a ship the size of a car can carry the power of a star. Vexthul felt something he had never felt before in his long life of conquest. Fear. Real, deep fear. What do you want? He asked. Rodriguez looked at him for a long moment. We want you to leave. All of you. Go back to wherever you came from and never return. And if we refuse? Rodriguez nodded to someone off screen again. Suddenly, more human ships appeared. Not hundreds, not thousands, millions. They filled the space around Earth like stars, stretching out as far as the sensors could reach. Then, you will join your missing battleships, Rodriguez said simply. Vexthul looked at his tactical display. The numbers were impossible. For every Hegemony ship, there were now 40 human vessels. His fleet, the largest ever assembled by the Hegemony, was outnumbered so badly that fighting would be suicide. You have 10 minutes to decide. Rodriguez said. Leave now, or become part of history. The screen went dark, leaving the hegemony, fleet alone with their fear and the terrible knowledge that they had made the biggest mistake of their lives. The massive crystal chamber floated in the darkness of space, its walls glowing with a soft blue light. Inside, hundreds of alien beings sat in rows that stretched up to the ceiling. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others looked like giant insects with sharp claws. A few resembled walking rocks with glowing eyes. They all stared down at the small group of humans sitting in the center of the room. Admiral Jake Morrison sat perfectly still in his blue uniform. His gray hair was cut short, and his dark eyes showed no fear. Next to him, Lisa Kane wore a simple black dress. Her blonde hair was pulled back, and she held a small device in her hands. Behind them stood 6 more humans in military uniforms. They looked calm, almost bored. The alien at the front of the room was massive. His skin was dark red and covered in scales. 4 arms moved as he spoke, and his voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. This was Ambassador Zethkar of the Hegemony, one of the most powerful groups in the galaxy. Humans of Earth, Zethkar said, his yellow eyes burning with anger. You have been called here to answer for your crimes against the Galactic Council. Lisa Kane stood up slowly. She was not tall, but something about the way she moved made the room go quiet. What crimes? She asked. Her voice was soft but clear. Zethkar laughed, a sound like rocks falling down a mountain. You dare to ask? Your people have refused to join the council. You have ignored our laws. You have built weapons without permission. You have claimed star systems that do not belong to you. Morrison stood up next to Kane. He was older than her, with lines around his eyes that came from years of hard decisions. We have claimed nothing, he said. We have only defended our home. Your home? Another alien spoke from the crowd. This one looked like a giant spider with silver fur. Earth is a small, worthless planet in an empty corner of space. You have no right to keep it from those who could use it better. Kane smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Worthless? Then, why do you want it so badly? The chamber erupted in angry voices. Aliens clicked, roared, and hissed at the humans. Some stood up and waved their claws or tentacles in the air, but the humans did not move. They just stood there, waiting. Zethkar raised one of his forearms, and the room became quiet again. Enough, he said. The hegemony has been patient with your people for too long. We offered you a place in our empire. We offered to teach you the ways of civilized beings. You refused. Now you will learn what happens to those who defy us. Morrison looked around the room at all the angry alien faces. Then he looked back at Zethkar. And what exactly are you planning to do? Our war fleet is already moving toward your solar system, Zethkar said with pride. 50,000 ships armed with weapons that can crack planets in half. Your pathetic, few hundred vessels will be destroyed in minutes. Your people will serve us, or they will die. Kane touched a button on the small device in her hand. Suddenly, a hologram appeared in the air above the humans. It showed a map of space with thousands of small dots moving toward a yellow star. Earth's star. 50,000 ships, Kane said, looking at the hologram. That is quite a lot. An alien that looked like a walking tree with too many eyes leaned forward. You see the hopelessness of your situation. Surrender now. And we might let some of your people live as slaves. Morrison crossed his arms over his chest. How long did it take you to gather this fleet? Zethkar seemed surprised by the question. 2 of your years, every ship we could spare from across the galaxy, the largest fleet ever assembled by the hegemony. 2 years, Morrison repeated. He looked at Kane and she nodded. That is interesting. What is interesting about it? Demanded another alien voice from the crowd. This one sounded like metal scraping against metal. Kane looked up at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at her. It is interesting because we have known about your fleet since the day you started building it. The chamber became very quiet. Even the soft humming of the crystal walls seemed to stop. Zethkar's yellow eyes narrowed. Impossible. Our movements are secret. Our communications are encrypted. Nothing is secret from those who know how to look, Kane said simply. A new alien stood up in the crowd. This one was tall and thin, with skin like polished metal and eyes that glowed green. You are bluffing, humans. Your technology is primitive. You barely learned to travel faster than light 50 years ago. Morrison smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Did we? The metallic alien looked confused. Our records show that humans achieved faster-than-light travel in the year 2157 of your calendar. Before that, you were trapped on your single world. Your records show what we wanted them to show, Kane said. Zethkar slammed one of his fists on the table in front of him. The sound echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. Enough of these games. You cannot defeat 50,000 warships with a few hundred primitive vessels. Morrison and Kane looked at each other again. Then Morrison turned back to face the alien crowd. Captain Roy Bennett, he said to one of the humans standing behind him. A younger man with brown hair stepped forward. Yes, sir. Send the message to Titan Base. Bennett pulled out a small communication device and spoke into it. Titan Base, this is Bennett. Code 77 Alpha. Repeat. Code 77 Alpha. A voice crackled back through the device, so clear that everyone in the chamber could hear it. Titan Base confirms Code 77 Alpha. All defensive protocols are now active. Home fleet is ready for deployment. Kane looked back up at the alien faces around them. Many of the aliens were whispering to each other now. Some looked worried. What is home fleet? Asked the spider-like alien. You will find out soon enough, Morrison said. Zethkar stood up, his massive form towering over the humans. You think you can frighten us with your little tricks? We know everything about your military. A few orbital stations, some mining ships, converted to carry weapons, maybe 300 real warships at most. We have studied your people for decades. Kane touched another button on her device. The hologram above them changed to show the solar system around Earth. Dozens of small blue dots appeared around the planets. These are our ships that you know about, she said. Then she touched another button. Thousands more blue dots appeared, filling the entire hologram with light. These are the ships you do not know about. The chamber exploded in shocked voices. Aliens jumped to their feet, pointing at the hologram and shouting in languages that sounded like breaking glass and grinding. Stone. Zethkar stared at the hologram, his forearms hanging at his sides. This is impossible. Where did you hide so many ships? Morrison picked up his hat from the chair and put it on his head. You never asked the right questions. Kane gathered her things and stood up. We came here today to give you one last chance. To turn your fleet around and go home in peace. And if we refuse? Zethkar asked, his voice much quieter now. Morrison walked toward the exit, the other humans following behind him. At the door, he turned back to look at the hundreds of alien faces staring at him in shock and fear. Then you will learn why it was a mistake to threaten Earth. The humans walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a room full of aliens who suddenly realized they might have made the biggest mistake in galactic history.